Усім вітання, це подкаст «Коли все має значення». Ми його ведучі і авторки. Ангеліна Карякіна мене звати. Зі мною Наталка Гуменюк.
Привіт всім.
Отже, наш гість, твій гість, Sławomir Sierakowski, відомий польський журналіст, редактор критики політичної, таке ліве інтелектуальне видання, літературознавець, також у нього є колонка в New York Times, він багато де дописує. Наталко, зрозуміло, що в Польщі турбулентні часи, з якого боку не подивись. І цікаво завжди класних, розумних поляків послухати і про те, що в них відбувається, і про те, що в нас відбувається. Ви, очевидно, з ним говорили про те, що відбувається в Україні, і про його активну залученість. Там є своя класна, крута історія. Зараз ти сама краще розкажеш про це. Але розкажи, що тобі було особливо цікаво в розмові з ним.
Отож, я додам, що Sławomir є ще й соціологом, який вивчає ставлення поляків до українських біженців в Польщі. Він за фахом соціолог. Окрім того, політична критика – це найбільше і ліве видавництво, і громадська організація. Зараз Sławomir ще є головою правління конференції «Імпакт». Це найбільша бізнес-конференція, яка відбувається в Польщі, але вона є європейською. В них торік Барак Обама був, скажімо, спікером, так? Тобто Славик собі поширює кількість речей, які він робить, окрім своєї інтелектуальної роботи, пішов в дуже практичну сферу. Але Славик ще є з одним ключових волонтерів для збору коштів для України. Загалом за ці роки він зібрав для України 15 мільйонів доларів 3 компаніями. Остання ще триває. І це не враховуючи ту кампанію, яку вони проводять з Тімоті Снайдером, вони близькі друзі. Тому до Славика в мене багато було питань, але ми говорили зі Славиком буквально в той час, коли стало відомо, що на виборах мера Нью-Йорку переміг прогресивний кандидат Zohran Mamdani. Славик є представником такого європейського інтелектуального лівого крила, прогресистів, який в великій кількості коаліцій, скажімо, там зі світовими лівими прогресивними діячами-активістами. Тому це було ідеальний спосіб відрефлексувати з ним перемогу в Нью-Йорку нового мера і взагалі відносини Східної Європи із республіканцями, і з оцим новим прогресивним поколінням демократів, в контексті війни, в контексті наших відносин. Це був початок розмови, а далі ми загалом, звісно, говорили про польсько-українські відносини, зокрема, як не потрапити в пастку вирішення якихось конфліктів і образ, коли ми десь чуємо щось не так з українцями в Польщі і навпаки, десь поляки щось там на українців ображаються, бо є цей ризик. Ми говорили загально, як оцінити польсько-українські і відносини, і ставлення до суспільства поляків, і як сильно змінилася Польща після повномасштабного вторгнення, і якою історично в цьому випадку має бути ця співпраця України і Польщі загалом, як двох суспільств, як двох економік, і в контексті української інтеграції в Європейський Союз і ймовірної конкуренції наших суспільств і бізнесів, бо завжди так буває. Якщо одна країна трошки стає багатшою, країна, яка східніша, скажімо так, і трошки бідніша, потім стає, коли вступає до Європейського Союзу, чи на цьому шляху рухається, вона стає конкурентом, дешевою робочою силою, і завжди починаються такі образи, так як німці там, можливо, на поляків, поляки на українців. Ось є ця тенденція. Ми, звісно, говорили про НАТО і польську реакцію так само на атаки дронами російськими. Остання колонка, останній текст Славоміра на Project Syndicate – це відома платформа, де ключові лідери думок публікують саме про це, так, якою була відповідь Польщі, чи була вона достатньою, хто поміг, Сполучені Штати чи Європа, більше, як це змінилося. І я ще додам, що, очевидно, ми говорили про змінний політичний контекст Польщі з новим президентом Каролем Nawrockim правим, і як Славик, як все-таки політичний голос, доволі критичний, скажімо так, дуже критичний до польських правих, бачить цю ситуацію, бо це вже змінилося, це президент, це не просто там як в цьому рухатися. Але я ще додам, що Славик буквально повернувся з Вірменії. був там тиждень, і він є теж таким апологетом залучення східного партнерства. Тому він возив і делегації іноземних європейських журналістів і лідерів думок до Грузії, і він є величезним апологетом підтримки білоруського громадянського суспільства. Славик був на всіх протестах в 20 році. І він залишається, скажімо, ми говорили про це, що в нас нема сили зараз в українців займатися ще й грузинами, вірменами, і білорусами і їхньою демократією. Ми за їхню демократію боремося на нашій війні проти Росії, так, і кров'ю якби захищаємо демократію у всьому регіоні, але, можливо, немає цієї можливості ангажуватися. Славик якраз залишається якби активним в цій сфері, щоб ангажувати і певні демократичні рухи в Вірменії, в Грузії і в Білорусі насамперед, так, щоб продовжувати цю комунікацію і, скажімо, блоком демократизувати Центральну і Східну Європу.
Розмови з такими людьми, вони не чорно-білі, вони не про те, що як все погано чи наскільки все добре, вони радше про те, що ми можемо робити, що зараз робиться, і те, що, напевно, десь не на поверхні, а про це треба говорити. Про це, в принципі, більшою мірою є наш подкаст. Але, слухай, дивлячись на те, що відбувається в Польщі, хочеш не хочеш, там від атаки дронів і реакції на них, від антиукраїнських наративів, ставлення до українців і так далі, виникає відчуття, м'яко кажучи, не те, що безнадійне, а доволі темне, да, і сумне. Чи все-таки у вашій розмові є щось, що дає нам надію на якісь зміни ситуації, і що саме? На що покладається Славомір? На громадянське суспільство? На кого нам надіятися?
Коли ти так сформулювала питання, я, можливо, його не так категорично сформулювала. Славик спитав мене, ти взагалі про що? Про які антиукраїнські настрої? Я не розумію, про що ти взагалі говориш. Це що там, знаєш? Він каже, якісь немає ніяких великих скандалів, нічого не відбувається. Ви почуєте його відповідь, але його головне застереження, що є там якісь маргінальні голоси, але постійна підтримка фінансова, навіть його волонтерських ініціатив, умовно кажучи, завжди сильно швидша, ніж він оголошував. Кожен збір, який він оголошував, закривався набагато швидше і продовжує закриватися набагато швидше. І всі соціологічні дослідження, які він проводить як соціолог, показують, що проблем нема. Є питання його, і я їх дещо відділила, відносин конкретно нового президента і його бекграунда, його правого популізму, і як туди вставляється і антиіммігрантський наратив, і це, але наполягає Славик, що десь, навіть якщо поляки щось роблять і не мають, можливо, десь морального, тобто є кілька аргументів. Є аргумент моральний, його аргумент, що Україну треба підтримувати просто з моральної позиції, все решта неважливо, але є економічна позиція, в якій українці сильно посилюють польську економіку, і це економічний аргумент. Але є третій аргумент, як би ти не ставився до України, поляки настільки не люблять Росію, що вони до кінця розуміють, що варіанту немає. І оце називається теж дружба супроти. І вона може бути в людей зовсім різних поглядів, зовсім різних ставлень. І оці, напевно, там 3 кити, на них і тримається це все. Це десь для когось моральна підтримка, для когось це там розуміння економіки, яка, можливо, в популізмі не працює, але фактично спрацьовує, бо є цей аргумент. І третє – це спільний ворог.
Ну що ж, цікаво. Давайте слухати тоді думки про це Сławomira Sierakowskiego, польського інтелектуала, журналіста, соціолога, керівника видання «Критика політична» у розмові з Наталкою.
Ми дуже дякуємо нашим слухачам, вам за ту підтримку, яку ви здійснюєте для цього подкасту, зокрема для роботи наших чудових колег, звукорежисерки Люби Гук і редакторки Іри Лопатіної. І на прохання ваше ми це зробили. Ми створили на сторінці лабораторії журналістики суспільного інтересу не просто сторіночку, де ви можете донатити за реквізитами, але й можливість робити одноразовий донат і регулярний донат. Довелося нам попрацювати над цим, але тепер це можливо. Знаю, що ці донати приходять. Це дуже-дуже нас підтримує. Знаю, що в Україні багатьох потрібно підтримувати. Але якщо є така змога, щоб ці розмови далі виходили, ми вам неймовірно вдячні, це дуже надихає. First of all, congratulations with your birthday. So I truly appreciate you speaking to me right after. And wish you all the best to Poland, to our kind of victory to all of us. I think that would be the best present.
My birthday wish is that Ukrainians will win the war. And it's true, it's frank, and it's really the best thing what can happen to me and to my country.
But we won't start with Poland and Ukraine, and that's the whole conversation. But we just also following the life in the US, and you spent quite some time in the US. You're following, you're very much connected, and you're progressive. You're kind of more on the left, and we have this huge shift that Zohran Mamdani is winning as the mayor of New York. And I've been a bit in the US, in New York, and understood that it's something where they are looking at the hope, because it's not surprising elections if you follow them, but still it's a sign. What does it mean for you? And you connect to quite a lot of progressives in the US, including in New York. So what is your take on that?
Normally you have two schools. One is saying that if you have too radical view on something, if you're too progressive, then the reaction comes and it causes backlash, right? So some politicians, like the presidential candidate in last presidential elections in Poland, the progressive candidate, started to do some concessions, thinking about the conservative electorate, thinking that, you're gonna use some, maybe not resentment to Ukrainians, but some skepticism. And this way you're gonna steal some voters from the right side, right? Didn't work. If you are a copy of something, people will always go for the original version. Another school is when there is a very big turn of public opinion to the right side, probably people will react to it. So it's better to be yourself. And I see that the new mayor of New York was just himself, not hiding anything, telling even the brutal truth about his ideas, called himself socialist, which in Europe would be to call yourself communist, really. Yeah, usually when you call yourself liberal in America, that means you are a social democrat in Europe. And the same with socialism, communism, right? And then all of these notions are quite blurred today, but as a symbol, it says something that this candidate decided to just somehow not ignore, but because you cannot ignore Trump, but not to be just reactive, to be initiative. And according to Nietzsche, for me, it's the best philosopher of power, with this idea of will to power. If you have will to power, you are initiating processes. And I believe that this mayor of New York just wanted to be initiator of something. Didn't want to follow what Trump is doing, rather preferring that Trump will follow him. And this is what happened. And this is a kind of a breakthrough, right? We're going to see whether it's enough to start some new, political change. But I think it's the right direction. So I don't buy this narration that if you're too progressive, then you are responsible for Trump victory. Okay, maybe it happened in here and there that people exaggerated a little bit, and for majority of Americans this was too much. But I don't believe that just being reactive can give you something in tough party politics. So for me, it's a good symbol.
But do you think it will mean a lot for the political change in the US in this current situation, that it actually shows that the Democrats are a bit waking up?
Well, we cannot know it, whether this is this moment. But for sure, it's something new. The fact that we have something new and new attitude, optimism, as Germans would say, Schwung, right? Or will to power, in more philosophical sense. This is usually it's a good symbol of some new political actors. If you want to be an actor, you have to have your own agenda. If you want to win, you have to push your agenda. So this is what happened.
How do you think, what would be a way of the European left and European progressives to connect to this new generation of the US progressives? Because there is this old tradition, that in Eastern Europe, in particular, we're speaking about Poles and Ukrainians, including in New York, which usually were connected to very conservative, more Republican-leaning diasporas. And in the end, it happened that at first we all, like traditionally, there was this connection between Poland and the Republicans, and the Republicans changed with Donald Trump. And then we had the situation in which kind of conservative Polish diaspora in the United States supported Trump, including the Ukrainian conservative.
This is not true. This is what Trump thinks.
No, partially it is. I've been to the communities kind of like prior to the election somewhere in Michigan, like who were supportive and who were religious. But so first of all, tell us what's not true. But that would be one question. I want to also you to elaborate a bit more on that. But also, what is like this our way to connect with the progressives, which we believe this new generation, they're coming from a different background. They're not any longer connected to Eastern Europe. Their background is coming from kind of, it's more global. People on the left are believed in this part of the world to be not more sympathetic to Russia. There is something specific with Americans today, with Trump leaning towards Putin. But still, this is kind of the people whom we are not really connected. Maybe we are, maybe I'm mistaken, but I'll give a floor to you.
First of all, there is nothing like, special connection between Poland and Republicans. I mean, first time I hear this narration. The rule here was that we cooperate with every administration. I mean, this is America decides and we cooperate with anybody who runs America, right? So this is the thing. Actually, the Polish right side, Kaczyński party, I mean, invested everything in Trump, which is a mistake because one day Trump will go. So, and then they would be on offside, to use football metaphor. Another myth is that Poles supported Trump. This was half-half, okay? Because, Poles are often stupid, right? Especially in America. Polish Polonia used to be quite exceptional when it comes to conservatism, Catholicism. Like Turks in Germany are much more pro-Erdogan than Turks in Turkey, right? So, of course, there is this shift. Trump believes it, and let him believe it, no problem. But this was half-half. I mean, there is nothing like, Poles prefer Trump over Kamala Harris or Democrats. Also, the war in Russia is something. Like, if you are Polish, I mean, being pro-Russian makes you very, very, very marginal. And I understand that, like, partly, at least, it's true also for Polonia in America. They understand that Russia is an enemy. They remember history because they live in history most often. When they observe Trump, like, welcoming Putin on red carpet, I think they are confused, if not shocked.
Then about this connection with the new generation, because I think that, and I'll maybe elaborate a bit more, especially after the Trump election, there was quite a push from a lot of people, also including the US, that, oh, you Ukrainians, you need to find the connection to the Trump voters, because before you were so much in touch with this kind of old generation of the Republicans and the Democrats, but they'll be gone, and there is totally new generation of both, MAGA people. But then there was a different discussion saying like, look, but don't forget the progressives, because they are new, they are young. For them, our part of the world means not that much. While some of the Ukrainians will try to engage to the Trump voters, don't miss the opportunity, just to get in touch, at least to explain where we are. Because I do think that, still we were, it's true that the Eastern Europe or Central Europe as such, meant kind of less. Again, because this generation is coming from all kind of the backgrounds, Ocasio-Cortez or all other, kind of more prominent today figures in the American progressives among the Democratic Party. How do you see that at quite a vocal European progressive intellectual? How you think we can communicate? Is there this proper communication? What is your experience? And what do you think how we can establish these relations?
When you have such a shift and like hegemony of Trump, it's the best time to invest in relations with Democrats. Everybody's chasing Republicans now. I mean, they usually have time only to do selfie with you. And this is what right-wing politicians from Europe and Eastern Europe are doing. Okay? Maybe except for Zelensky, because Zelensky is in a much harder situation and must be much more flexible and can be blunt, can be also a dove in White House. I mean, he has to play. Churchill lived in White House to push Roosevelt to, join Great Britain and fight Nazis. So there are different ways, and I understand that Zelensky must try everything to do what is possible. But in general, you invest in companies that are in crisis rather than the companies that are like, assets are extremely expensive, everybody wants it, and it's, going into be a bubble sooner or later, right? So this is how I perceive Trump. I mean, when I go to Washington, I always not only find time to spend with Democrats, but they have time, they will come back sooner or later. Some of them, at least, some of them have there's younger generation Democrats. There are people like Sullivan, Blinken, or Clintons that are very, very smart, very, very well experienced. And use this time. I mean, this would be my suggestion, especially for younger generation. Don't ignore guys that are now in a weaker position. They're gonna come back soon, especially in two-party system. Probably Democrats won't disappear. So never forget about them. So this is at least my way. I remember when Republicans were on the not margins, but were not ruling. I mean, this was the good time to talk to Republicans. But now we have three, I would say, powers in America: Democrats, Republicans, and Trump. Trump almost owns Republicans, but if you see the attitude towards Russia, Republicans are much, much, much more tough in general towards Russia. And if it would depend on Republicans in Senate or in general in Congress, then Russia would be sanctioned much more harshly and much earlier. But Trump is a different kind of person, and nobody knows what he really thinks about Putin, what he really wants, what he's able to, what he's ready to do. I mean, from this point of view, he's a one big question mark, and he changes his mind every second hour. I mean, if he has one idea for 2 months, this is already a big thing, right?
Returning to our relations, you're quite an open critic of Karol Nawrocki as the new Polish president. There are questions to his rhetorics. At the same time, I want first be more broader. How you describe today's Polish-Ukrainian relations with all its complexity? And I'll make quite a long intro to that, because it's very usual and very human that during the first kind of periods of the crisis, there is an overwhelming support. And the support Poland has given to Ukraine was incredible. And then, of course, the people are coming, and I saw it in every single country where the refugees were coming, that at first they're welcome, but then there are the question about them buying the expensive flats, them taking the jobs, and it just everywhere. It's not about Ukraine and Poland. Of course, you can dig into historic relations, into some, rolling, into other things. And of course, there is a general, question that there is a richer country and poorer country. And of course, the people who are more richer, they're looking a bit down upon the people who are coming and doing kind of less sophisticated jobs. It's there. And we need to work with that as both societies and the Ukrainians. But I also don't want to be in this thing to say that, there is this scandal, there is this scandal, there is this kind of political negative comment about the Ukrainians, because in the end, things change dramatically anyway. For me, my airport is Warsaw Airport. It's home airport for me. That's how I think about it, and anytime I fly, I don't honestly like it. It's not the most convenient one, but it's mine. And then I appreciate. I maybe don't like the train. Maybe I'm already fed up with it. But it's my way out of, from Ukraine elsewhere. And there are still people who supporting Ukraine. It's there. And we have so many millions of Ukrainians who have already changed the economy, changed Warsaw, changed a lot of things in Poland. What is a way to deal with that and discuss? And then we can go to more imminent problems, But I think we haven't chance to talk for you about that for the last couple of years. So I really want to understand your assessment of how this, how the discussion should be.
First of all, what is going on now is the best chance in Polish history to have strategic, strong partner on the similar place on the map. And if you want to balance Russia, if you want to be ready to resist or even to defend yourself, to be like on the same position in a military way or in any other way, you need to have alliance between Ukraine and Poland. This is a historical thing. This is a structural thing. Poles should remember that Russia without Ukraine cannot be an empire, cannot be a big danger for Poles. Russia with Ukraine will be always a huge danger and will always be, it's enough to have a huge danger on your border, to have weaker economy, to have more conflicts in politics, to be just, structurally weaker. Then Europe, which is, important thing for Poles, of course, Poles joined the EU. If we want to be strong, the way always goes through Brussels. So the same thing is true for Europe. Europe with Ukraine, with Ukrainian army, Ukrainian technology, Ukrainian experience, Ukrainian innovation, Europe can be an empire. From this point of view, this is very easy to understand. It's like, 1-2 sentence, and this is entire theory about international relations in this region. This is gonna decide the future of the region. And now comes people, right? And people don't follow that much international relations. They don't know really well history. I mean, they remember only some symbols like Volhynia or like Second World War or this or that, but they don't connect dots that much as we do people who follow politics in a professional way. There are no scandals in Poland when it comes to Ukrainians. There was no one broken glass because of Ukrainians. There was no one, street fight because of Ukrainians. Ukrainians do everything right in Poland. I mean, they work, they are much more active on the labor market than Poles even. They pay a lot to Polish budget. We should thank them for what they do in Polish economy. 2.7% of Polish GDP comes from Ukrainian work. If we are happy that we have 3.5% of GDP and we are the fastest economy in Europe and entire OECD, is because of Ukrainians. Take this 2.7% from it and it's going to be almost stagnation in Polish economy. If somebody needs not only moral arguments that are enough for me to support Ukraine, there are many other arguments. I mean, it's very hard to find not fake argument against Ukrainians in Poland. Also, history shouldn't be so relevant because history should go to historians, right? And also Poles should remember that we also needed time to talk about Polish guilt in Polish history, about anti-Semitism. You need to have certain comfort in your democracy, okay? You need to have stable political system. You cannot be in a war. You have to have some space for talking in the public sphere about history. Ukrainians didn't have it. They had no occasion really to do it. They always had to have fight with Russia, infiltrated by Russia, fighting with Yanukovych or Kuchma before, etc., etc. So expecting from Ukrainians that they're going to be on the same level of discussing Ukrainian history as Poles, and Poles are not really the best in talking about their own guilt. And we reached certain level when it comes to anti-Semitism, to fight with anti-Semitism, but then came backlash. So we are not a role model of talking about our mistakes in history. Okay, so we shouldn't teach Ukrainians. And generally, if we will choose history over future, then it's gonna be just stupid because what we have is future, not past. I mean, in our lives, you want your children to speak Polish on Polish streets. Stop talking about Volhynia. Start talking about strategic alliance. You wanted them to speak Russian? I mean, no problem. Let's talk about Volhynia. Let's talk about, partitions of Poland. Let's talk about Khmelnytsky, etc., etc. Okay, but then you are ignoring what's going to happen next in Polish history, right? For Polish future.
Are there specific campaigns, which are, trying to make kind of some quarrel? So, for instance, I remember very well, I've been during the international conference here when Russia sent the drones to Poland, and then we learned that there was this push somehow through the bot farms to persuade somehow to bring this narrative that's it's because of the Ukrainians. So even it's a Ukrainian drone, not a Russian one, and it was somewhere in the Polish information space. What for me was extremely concerning, that we knew it was not true, but I've been in some kind of conference setting with some prominent Ukrainian intellectual who kind of said that, oh, but this is like in Poland, they're blaming us. And I thought like, oh my God, you kind of recreating this anti-Ukrainian created sentiment in Ukraine, which might create the anti-Polish sentiment here, but you kind of, and I'm in the conference with a kind of a group of the intellectual who should be open to a different type of the debate.
It went like this. So for the first time, we really had strong and efficient Russian propaganda in Polish internet. You know, for Russia, it's much harder to invade Polish public sphere and even social media. I mean, in comparison to France, Germany, America, maybe even Ukraine, or I don't know, or Ukraine before 2022. But for the first time, we really observed that something shocking in Polish internet. I mean, there's bot farms. I mean, we only now learned what Russia can do in social media in Poland. So this is it. But look, we are hostages of the most visible actors in this discussion. And the most visible actors are the most radical actors. You can be only radical when it comes to Ukraine in one way. To be anti-Ukrainian, because I'm extremely pro-Ukrainian. I mean, it won't cause any scandal in social media. It won't cause any viral in social media, except for one thing. If you give to Polish public opinion clear reason to express their support for Ukraine, like fundraising campaign, then you're gonna see masses of posts that are supporting Ukraine. Masses. I did it 3 times. And each time it was faster. I mean, it should be the opposite, because the war, people get used to it, right? And it was faster. When I was raising funds for Bayraktar at the beginning of the war, this was 220,000 Poles that contributed. That's the largest fundraising campaign in Polish history. And for arms. So this was the only and the largest campaign after 1939. Fundraising campaign for arms, okay? And people joined it from every region, from all sides of the spectrum. And I am very left-wing in Poland. So I have many enemies. And these enemies were contributing. Well, I even created sub-campaign which was entitled, I hate Sierakowski, but I want to support Ukraine. And this was very popular. And then a year after, with Timothy Snyder, we started another campaign for armed vehicles. And it went faster. Now I'm trying to support Sergiy Żadan in many projects, including arms, but also camps for children, therapy for veterans, etc., etc. And it's even faster. So the problem is that there is silent, I would say, majority still in Poland, pro-Ukrainian, but it's silent, okay? So we can lose the war when it comes to who is for what, I mean, or even presidential elections. But the pro-Ukrainian sentiment is here, and it's much stronger than anti-Ukraine sentiment, for sure. I checked it. I'm a sociologist. I did research, qualitative, quantitative. I did fundraising campaign. I talked to people, politicians, not politicians. Poles are still for pro-Ukrainian. I mean, believe me, I mean, I checked it in every possible way. And even if you look at the polls, I mean, still the anti-Ukrainian sentiment is much weaker than pro-Ukrainian sentiment. Not only because we are angels, it's not because we are angels, it's because there is Russia. And you have to be really idiot and really anti-Polish to ignore the fact that there is Russia and to blame Ukrainians for drones. So yes, there are gonna be people that are gonna bullshit like this. Yes, you can even win presidential elections. But if you really want to know how societies are to each other, I still believe that on both sides, societies are ready for this strategic alliance. And this is our job to work on it. I mean, to give these reasons, to express pro-Ukrainian attitude, to fight with Russian propaganda, to tell the truth, I mean, to show economic results, which actually was a viral here, when people realized how many billions are going to the budget because of Ukrainians. This was viral. I had a little bit skeptical attitude to it, because for me, moral reasons are enough. I don't need Ukrainians to pay for the budget to support them, okay? But if somebody needs, go ahead. Then there is a lot of good arguments that defend Ukrainians, support Ukrainians. I even think that when the war will end and some Ukrainians will come back to Ukraine, there's gonna be a panic in Europe. People will fight to have Ukrainians back, or to have them still in Polish economy. Now, then these anti-Ukrainian idiots will understand what they are losing because of them. Because I know that in Polish schools, there are teachers that are extremely anti-Ukrainian. Because usually Ukrainians go not to best schools because they have to work, okay? And they're new, and they don't know language that much at the beginning, okay? So usually in best schools are frustrated teachers. And I followed this phenomenon. I talked to the Ministry of Education. I was like, we are trying to intervene. For these children, Poland will be trauma. Because they came, they expected some kind of understanding, okay? And then they saw Polish teachers and that made them like isolated group, first of all, and then punished them for not developing their language, because they cannot develop their language if they are discriminated, okay? And they have to work hard, find a place, live there in like 10 people in one flat, etc., etc. By the way, I don't also buy this argument that Ukrainians are coming to Warsaw with the great cars, buying best flats. I haven't seen anyone. I mean, I live in the center of Warsaw, man. I'm not stupid. I have eyes. I mean, I understand what means all these cliches. I am sensitive. And then I don't see, I don't know. I mean, maybe it happens, but for sure it's not nothing like visible when it comes to statistics or something.
Slavik, how much money have you raised personally?
I think above 15 million euros. Together with Timothy, a little bit more. But like taken together. Also, don't forget, Turkish company gave Bayraktar for free. So including Bayraktar, all the support that went to Ukraine was about 15 million euros. So you can do it individually, and you can do it having only Facebook. So social media can be also useful to work for Ukraine.
Because you announced then it was still in 2022 when you'll collect the money for Bayraktar, and you've collected, but the Turkish gave it for free, and you can use money on top of that.
For charity, exactly. So 5.5 was Bayraktar, 5.5 was like charity, and then these new campaigns. I mean, one is going on still, so we don't know how we're gonna end up with, but we are quite efficient in it. And thanks to Poles, but thanks to Belarusians also, because they were active to support Ukraine. Thanks to different social groups.
I'm there to acknowledge that, and also to thank you a lot.
No, come on. We should thank Ukrainians for fighting.
Well, my call for all of us is, be very cautious, because I remember the scene when I was, there was something with the railway and with my plane, and I had a driver who was bringing me to get to this train in a different station, not to help. And I was literally late, but the train was still there, and I went something wrong, went through the border when it was already closed, and there was a very rude Polish border police.
I hate them. Yeah. They, Ukrainian border police is very nice. Polish border police, Poles need to have somebody below them. I mean, I'm sorry, Poles have complexes. They need to have somebody to blame. And by the way, before being those Poles that are anti-Ukrainian, before they were anti-Polish, but now they have Ukrainians. Tomorrow they're going to find somebody else. This is about Poles. It's not about Ukrainians.
But you know what I wanted to say? I had a driver who was Ukrainian, and he was very he lives in Poland, and he was like, oh, they're not nice. And again, this Polish. And I said, look, shut up. They let me in. I was late. Actually, they shouldn't. They had the right to refuse me boarding fully, but they let me in. So in the end, I said, I'm grateful. They were not very smiley, but they understood a poor Ukrainian girl who begged to get me into the plane, which was already closed for boarding. So in the end, I think we need to really find the way, especially when it works.
I agree. We're not dangerous. Ukrainians are probably not dangerous too. We have hard history. We are traumatized societies. Trauma doesn't make you more smiling or more open for another people.
On the drones, the Russian attack on the drones, what were indeed the lessons for Poland in form of the defense, and how did it change also your idea about possible response of NATO?
So I talked to ministers, I talked to soldiers, and I asked them, because, it's quite clear that next drones it's going to be, again, some drones, but one going to be a missile, or one going to be armed, or two. And then something will happen, or somebody will die, right? And then it's going to be another level, but still hybrid. So of course, this gray zone between, provocation and war, they're going to use for sure. And my question was like to them, when is this red line really that you're going to shut down aircrafts or missiles or what? And they say, look, we're not going to shoot down everything. We know how it works. You can have an aircraft, you can have something that just, lost the way, lost GPS or something. We cannot shoot down everything. We're going to send alerts. And if we're going to realize that it is really dangerous, then we're going to shoot it down. And I believe that this is the only way. We cannot just accept. Planes are like, floating on Polish air, or for sure we have to set some conditions and follow it with clear reactions. One thing, very important, Poles realized they can count on Europe, not really America, because America didn't do nothing. They were talking about like, oh, maybe this was a mistake, we have to check it out. We don't know what really happened. But Europe reacted in 1 hour. France sent their Rafales, Norwegians sent like Marines, and then Germans sent Patriots. Everybody sent something immediately from Europe. This was a very important message to Russia. We're not going to be passive. And we are 450 million people, plus UK, plus Canada. So we know what to do. We are ready. We are much richer. We have also our industry. What's changing in Germany and in Poland, or we started to produce a lot of munitions, a lot of new things. So we cooperate with Ukrainians. Some of Ukrainians' factories are in Poland or in Great Britain. I hope there will be more. We should learn from Ukrainian. Everybody, the Ukrainian army is the strongest army in Europe, by far. We sent more tanks to Ukraine than Great Britain has. The big stake of this war is on what side will be Ukrainian army. I understand that the only possibility is to have it in Europe or not. And Europe should be more determined, but it's getting there. This is the great occasion for Europe to start to be a global actor. And we should use this occasion. It's the same rule like in Russia. You want to be a global actor only with Ukraine today. You don't want to be, then you can be anti-Ukrainian, whatever. You can be stupid still.
It sounds very reassuring, in particular because I'm engaging a lot with the global partners, and in particular after the election in the US, in all those change, I had quite a few meetings, and a lot of people in Brazil or in the Middle East, they were saying, but you cannot count on Europeans. You cannot count. They are weak. They're irrelevant. And I was telling we can. But it was great, very honestly, kind of a bit of sad to understand how Europe is not acknowledged as a player, mainly, in the geopolitics compared to what it should be. And that's what was a bit disappointing. But I think within this time, it's proven that, that Europe have come up and stood up. But I mentioned NATO, and we briefly just mentioned European Union, because now Ukraine in this path of accession. And it's also inevitable that it's not just about Hungary and Orban, but there are always those economic competition. Those economic competition was the Germans were not happy with the Polish, farmers and workers.
France was not happy with farmers. There was our way was not a fast track. It was not that long, but it took 10 years or even more than 10 years, right? And this was about the EU, not NATO. And of course, there were many obstacles, and there are many skeptical politicians in Europe. So, of course, for Ukraine, it will be, it has to be also, it will cause some obstacles. And Poland will be a part of it. You cannot compete with Black Earth in Ukraine. Nobody can compete it in the world. So yes, you have to be ready for that. Germany, at the end of the day, was amazing advocate of Polish accession. Same should be true for Poland when it comes to Ukraine. We should be your advocate. Germans helped us, we should help Ukraine. And we all will be beneficiaries. It's just a question of time.
In this regard, with our minds moving a bit east, I always thought that, Ukraine could be also this force which, would support Belarus would support Georgia, Moldova, and all other partners in problem. Yet I did understand that, especially in the first year of the war, there is just lack of capacity. We support with what we can, with the blood, with blood of the people who are dying. However, on the emotional level, on a political level, there could be more unity in a way, like in the joint meetings, discussions. But I didn't want to have this situation like, oh, the Georgians, why they failed, let's say, defend themselves, instead of saying like, how can we help Georgians to stand up against what they are living through? So you've just returned from Armenia, which is also quite a unique thing after the Karabakh has been taken back by force by Azerbaijan. A very huge change with the relations with Russia, which was an Armenian supporter in keeping Karabakh in Armenian control. What is your take about that? And also, where do you see now, what could be this policy towards Georgia, Armenia, and Belarus?
So look, there is tradition already, Eastern Partnership, that was initiated by Poland and Sweden. And this was quite successful, although not that successful that these countries, thanks to Eastern Partnership, joined NATO or the EU. No. But it changed a lot in public spheres, and also Western Europe learned a lot about these regions, okay? A year ago, as Impact Conference, we initiated trips for foreign journalists to regions like Georgia or Armenia. A year ago, we went to Georgia just before elections that were rigged. Unfortunately, we met ministers, leaders of judiciary, media, NGOs, pretty much everybody. Majority of these people are in prison now. Georgia is, unfortunately, we're losing Georgia. Although Georgians are extremely pro-Ukrainian, Georgians are fighting in Ukraine against Russia. Georgians are just Western, right? Western in the sense that they're part of European civilization and one of the pillars. Okay, Georgia is the second Christianized country in history. Armenia is the first. Okay, so Armenians are also here. We are in one family. Okay, the problem is only Russia. Of course, Russia is losing Armenia now. Armenia is locked in the sense that, that border with Turkey is closed. The Georgia, is going into Russian hands. Azerbaijan is a former enemy. But this war, this bad solution for Armenia is a big chance for Armenia, okay? Now that there is no conflict anymore, they can start to cooperate, focus on economy. The war was toxic for Armenian elites, for Armenian mafias, for Armenian corruption, for, trading arms and people, etc. So this was toxic, totally toxic. So it's now, I think it's Armenian time in the region. And we should invest as much as possible in Armenian economy. It's unfortunately very, it's also partly in hands of Russia. Armenian telecom, Armenian banks. There are some military bases, but more and more Russians are expelled from Armenia. So what they're saying to me, and I think they're a little bit too optimistic, is that Russian soldiers will go. I'm not sure whether they will just say goodbye and go, but a lot of them left Armenia already. The leverage is in economy, and they believe that this leverage will be enough for Russia to be satisfied. So soldiers will go, Russians will be still happy, because there are a lot of Russians there, by the way. Majority is anti-Russian, although I met some guys that didn't want to answer me whether they are pro-Putin or not. And it's Armenia, it's Caucasus, it's far away. By the way, I also, one thing about Georgia, or rather Ukraine, because, I was very ashamed of this farmers' strike, and blockade for Ukrainian export. I was very, very unhappy with the decision of Polish president to veto extension of social services for Ukrainians in Poland. But when I asked Ukrainians, what do you think about it? They said, we're not that shocked. And also, look, did we support Georgia when Georgia was in war with Russia? Did we send weapons? Did we open borders for Georgians? Did we, what we did at that time, right? I don't think it's like a real analogy, because Ukraine had their own issues at that time also. and also with Russia, right? But yeah, I mean, we are all learning how to support each other in Europe. And I think we are all obliged to support each other. I think we should now be also very active in Moldova, in Georgia, and Armenia. The weaker Russia is, the more Western or European nations are in the EU, the stronger we are. The clearer picture is on the map, okay? They're just part of us, same nations, including Belarusians. I was during all protests in Belarus. I mean, from the get-go, almost till the end. Social revolution in Belarus succeeded, for sure. They are 500 kilometers more to the west. Political revolution failed, almost. It was really close to overturn, Lukashenko. But we failed. But when Belarus is now like Poland in 1983. Okay, we had our revolution, like Poland during Solidarity time. Then, unfortunately, it collapsed, and we had to be still a satellite of Russia. But then there was a window of opportunity when there was chaos in Kremlin, and it's gonna be again sooner or later. And then Belarusians will jump in, I believe. So I always still support Belarusians, although I know that for Ukrainians it's not that easy, right? Because bombs are coming from Belarus also. We are all in one family and on one boat when it comes to Russia. So let's get together.
I want to ask you more now about for inner Polish political situation, socio-political situation, where we are now, because we are following to extent we can do, like there was a peace government and there was a change, but now again, the more right-wing president won. So is it just like how the Polish society is just how it is, and we need to live that, like there would be always this, not always, but for meantime, this balance? Or as somebody who is more on the left and is like openly political voice, what do you think is the role of left today in Poland and in societies ours?
I'm on the left, and I still run the largest left-wing NGO in Poland, which is political actor also, because we have largest online daily left-wing. We have one of the leading publishing houses in Poland and many cultural centers, etc., right? But I understand that I have to support Tusk because left is too weak just to decide about everything, right? So the problem is that Poles did not change in one day in 2023. I wrote a book called Society of Populists because it was based on research, and unfortunately we are not. 8 years of populism have consequences in Polish society. These presidential elections is like Rafał Trzaskowski, who was a Democratic candidate and somebody that was like almost president. Because he was in public polls ahead of everybody, by far. And he lost. And he lost more, not with Nawrocki, but with social trends. Poland in 2 years became much more anti-system, anti-democratic, sovereignist, very radical. And it's true about all constituencies. And in polarized society, you win by motivation. The problem is that Tusk promised a lot. Without having president, everything can be vetoed without having your own president. And Duda was vetoed quite a lot. And the government, and this was a mistake, was waiting on Trzaskowski to be a president. So many people were disappointed that the government is just waiting, not doing what they promised. And then there were some mistakes in campaign, but this is like local issue. Nawrocki, with his shocking biography, former pimp, the guy who stole a flat from an older person, the guy who took part in brawls of ultra fans. The guy with like extremely shady biography won elections because this biography helped him. Why? Because now the polarization is about elites versus popular class. Same in America. And if you cause such a shock in liberal media, in liberal elites, that means you're my friend. If you're a popular class and people hate this politician, you perceive him as a victim of elites. Then you support him, okay? Especially if he's a no-name. Because Kaczynski took, again, a no-name, okay? And people invested all their emotions in it, okay? And anti-elitist emotions are very strong in Poland because we have history based on cleavage. that has like 4 centuries between elites and popular class, between noble class at that time, okay, and peasants. And Polish noble class made many mistakes in history. They never wanted to give freedom. Tsar gave freedom to Polish peasants. Kaiser gave freedom to Polish peasants, not Polish noble class. So when Polish noble class or elites today are saying, fight for independence, fight for constitutional court, fight for free media, it's relevant for cities, okay? But it's not that relevant and appealing to people in province. People in province, when they have a choice between cash party, which is populist party that offers you cash. PiS did it. This is why they became hegemonic, because they gave childcare 500 plus zloty for everybody, then 13th pension, 14th pension. They were giving social transfers. And if you have a cash party and another party like Reform Party, that like, you know, civic platform, they calculated everything, they know how to invest in infrastructure, everybody will be beneficiary because it's much better investment than just to distribute cash among people. Still, people prefer to have cash because they don't trust the state. Because state was always communist, Tsar, you know, state was always an enemy. And also there is no trust among people. People will always use something that is like visible now, not tomorrow. You know, you take from the government what you can take because you don't know what's going to happen next. Maybe the next government will reverse all the reforms. This is how people think. So this is why Nawrocki won. But now with Nawrocki, Kaczynski has a problem because there is a new leader on the right side. Okay. Then there is a new far-right party, Konfederacja, 15%. And then there's a new far-right party, Brown Party, who has 6%. What it means? That means that they are fighting with each other. And there's a big tradition in Poland of like suicidal fights on the right side. So sometimes it's good to, you know, put the ball on their side and then they kill each other. Of course, we cannot rely on it only. But on the left side, what was a problem for us and what caused huge crisis and disappointment was that 4-party coalition, they did not agree on pretty much everything. So, but now, I mean, 2 coalitioners are dead, civic platform is growing, and the left is still divided into 2 parties, but sooner or later they're going to integrate because both can fail and not pass the threshold. So the plan is quite simple. Tusk should grow to 36, 38%, and they have already 34. Left can get 10 to 12%. And it can be enough to get second term of Tusk in the government. And this gonna probably end up Kaczynski's career. And, you know, they will need some time to reorganize themselves, reintegrate, etc., etc. So I'm an optimist. This was so bad, and now it's just getting better. And I hope it's true for America sooner or later.
Because how otherwise, you know, if we are not optimists and we're just searching the best in like our past, there is no way. So Slavik, thank you so much for the optimism, for all the support. Again, wish us victory sooner rather than later, but it's inevitable that it will happen.
And thank you very much for your pieces, texts, support, and thank you Ukrainians for defending Ukraine, Poland, and entire Europe.